My name is Michael Warren, and this is my testimony. I was a very blessed child, surrounded by a wonderful family, and it seemed like each one of my family members had a special love for the Lord. When I was young and my mom and dad would go to work, I would go to my grandma and grandpa's house, and their love for the Lord was so evident in everything they did. My grandpa led music at church. My grandma just radiated the Lord. My mom and dad were the same way. Anything they did, any kind of trouble that they had, it was always given up to the Lord. So many instances in my life that showed me how important that relationship with the Lord was. At one point in my life, my father, who was self-employed, was struggling to find work. He's a painter, and so sometimes work is good, and then sometimes it's just not there. And then there was an instance where you could feel some of the financial stress in our house. So my parents, being who they are, I can vividly remember my mom just saying, "We're going to pray about it." And they did. And I don't know exactly how long it was, but it did not feel very long. And suddenly the phone rang, and it was a man on the phone asking for my father. And he had a church sanctuary in Nashville, Tennessee, for my dad to paint. So a place that's 3 hours away, somebody calls and answers the prayer of my parents. And those are things that I noticed as a young child. And so, with having a grandmother and grandfather who loved the Lord, and a mother and father who trusted deeply in the Lord, those are the things that led me to my faith. And I can vividly remember one night going into my mom and dad's bedroom and kneeling by the bed. And my dad and I, and my mom was right there, we all prayed together, and I remember asking the Lord in my heart, and it was the best decision I ever made. This is my son, Mac, and a few years ago, he was diagnosed with a lesion in his spinal cord. It turned out that lesion was a cancerous lesion, and he ended up, at the age of 2 years old, had to go through chemo for an entire year. This was a tough time in our life. My wife and I, we absolutely had to just lean on the Lord. It's a time where me personally, I didn't understand terminology. I didn't fully understand what was going on. My wife is a little bit better at that. And that's one of the other things that, is so good about the Lord. He provided me with somebody that could give me comfort right next to me. Katie, my wife, has done that and through this. And it has been a fantastic being by her side throughout this entire situation. So he's 10 years old now, getting ready to turn 11, and we've been kind of doing this thing since he was 2. In his first 8-hour surgery that he had, where they tried to go in and actually remove the lesion from his spinal cord, there was a point during the surgery where he lost all motor function to each one of his limbs. Now, we didn't know that immediately. We were waiting in the waiting room, but our music minister, Brother Barry, was there, and with so many other people, and we sat and we prayed. There was some sort of comfort that you get that is almost unexplainable when you just put things in God's hands. Fast forward, Mac has, come through that surgery successfully. Because of the lesion in his spinal cord, he's got scoliosis in his back, and so he's got a little bit of a curvature. So this was the next step that we had to go to. And we had to have a 2-month stay in the hospital, where Mac had to wear a halo around his head. He didn't leave the hospital for those 2 months, and it was either me and Mac, or Mac and his Mima, or Mac and his mom, or Mac and some family member up there at all times. And he has had to have metal growing rods put in his back. I was personally amazed at how he handled the situation. He was trapped in a room, basically, trapped in a hospital, could not leave. He was being forced to put on weight, and so he was getting put out of his comfort zone, and he handled it unbelievably well. There were times where I broke down, Katie broke down, but you know what? At no point did we ever think that God wasn't in everything that we were doing. There were so many different situations that popped up that allowed us to hopefully, potentially show God's light through this situation. And honestly, we're thankful for it. Anything that we've done, it has been an absolute success. It has been difficult. It has been just flat out hard at times, but when you give it up to God and you can see the bigger picture at times, it is so wonderful. I would just say from my experiences, having gone through all these things with my son Mac, I've had many times where I've been in waiting rooms and I've been praying, and I know what the final measure is, and that is to just give it up to God and trust in Him. I don't know how I would make it through if I didn't have the Lord to lean on.